My name is Ciaran O'Reilly, and I'm playing the role of Frank in Molly Sweeney.
Great. Ciaran, where are you from originally?
I'm from County Cavan in Ireland, a town called Virginia, County Cavan.
How long ago?
I left. I'm in.
I don't need to know how old you are, but yeah, when did you leave? How long?
I left. I'm 33 years in the United States.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So but I grew up in this town of Virginia, which had a population of 500 people, and had 19 pubs.
I'm sorry?
19 pubs, 500 people, 2 churches, a Protestant and a Catholic church.
Oh wow! I think the next question that I would ask then is how familiar is a place like Ballybeg?
It's very Ballybeg, where Brian Friel sets most of his plays, is Ballybeg, small town, and it's very, very close, and that's one of the things about Brian Friel and myself, is that I feel I know the people he's writing about, and sometimes I am those people he's writing about.
What brought you to the U.S.?
To seek my fame and fortune and become a huge, huge movie star.
Fantastic.
Now, I had never acted before I came, or would know my way into a studio or a theatre for that matter, but I still wanted to be a big movie star.
Well, then, how did you get into it then? What was that first spark of inspiration?
Well, I was in a place where Irish people go a lot. I was in a pub, and I was across the road from a theatre that were doing their tech rehearsals, and lo and behold, but somebody in a small role off a Brian Friel play, Freedom of the City, didn't show up, and they were on their break, and I knew one of the guys, and he says, "Why don't you come over and do this? It's not that big. You're giving evidence in court. You don't even need to learn your lines. You can just read from your notes." And so I went over and I read from my notes, and that's what I do these days. I read from my notes still.
Oh, I don't know about that. You give an immensely charismatic performance.
Oh, thank you so much.
In this play, it's a real pleasure actually watching
Thank
all of
you
you
very
perform. But what a lovely company it is.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about Molly Sweeney, about the play.
Sure. Well, I coincidentally saw the very, very first performance ever given of Molly Sweeney. I happened to be in Dublin. Happened to be just driving on my way home out of Dublin, and there was said Molly Sweeney, first preview tonight, and I swerved the car in, got out, and I walked into the theatre, and Brian Friel was at the door, and he looked at me and says, "What are you doing here tonight?" Because he thought it's not that cool to be showing up for the very first preview. And I said, "Brian, I just happened to see that it was there." But I was blown away by it. I thought it was just a fantastic story. You know, it's all of the characters are so carefully delineated. I screwed that word up. But so carefully carved out that and each one's journey feels, you know, spine-tingling to me. I mean, I was just as intrigued by Rice's, the doctor's journey, and him trying to make his way out of his own morass, and Frank's journey. Will this be the one that he'll actually finally find a way to commit? Mm-hmm. And of course Molly's story.
Is there a moment in the play that you're particularly drawn to?
Funnily, I saw it that first time, and that was in 1994, so it's a good many years ago. I always remembered what was in my mind was Frank's story towards the end of the play, where he talks about the Badgers, and the parallels between that story of the Badgers who don't see too very, very well, and how he was trying to do well by the Badgers, mm-hmm. and ended up destroying them, not wanting to give away anything about the play, but there's a fantastic parallel on those two stories, and that stuck with me.
Sure.
And it's one of my favourite scenes in the play.
That's great. It's fascinating actually how it does seem like each of the characters suffers from a kind of blindness.
Indeed. Yeah. It was interesting when Oliver Sacks came to see the play.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, he came and because I'm the producer of the play in New York, I know all these things that are going on around the place. So I knew where he was going to be and where he was going to be sitting. He needed to sit in the front row because he's got blindness.
Yeah.
He's actually got now I'm forgetting what it technically is. He's called face blindness. He actually suffers from face blindness, and he does not remember faces of people. So you could walk. So the odd thing about face blindness is that he can recognize people's pets. So sometimes when he's in an elevator of the building that he lives in, for instance, he'd know who the person was by their dog, but he wouldn't remember them. I think when he came back afterwards to see us in the show, I don't think he remembered who we were.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he remembered there was a female who played Molly, but I think probably between myself and the doctor, he didn't know who we were. Yeah.
Amazing. You've met Brian Friel.
Yes.
You know him well.
I've met him many times. Yeah, and he's and corresponded with him a lot over the years.
Yeah.
I remember before the Irish Rep even existed, I had a notion of putting together a one-man show. God help us, what actors do when there's nothing to on Irish writers. And I remember writing to him and asking if I could use a section from, I think it was Freedom of the City or perhaps Philadelphia, Here I Come. And I remember by instant mail having this warm, lovely note back from him. And I've heard that about him since, that he's so generous with young people in the business, that he really takes the time to write these personal notes. When we were building our theatre down there and we were trying to do a capital campaign, and we asked Brian if he would say a few words, I faxed him the request, and I sat back at my desk and I was doing other things expecting to hear from him in a couple of days, and before I left the office I suddenly heard the fax going. It was like late at night, and there was this incredible piece that he had written about how sacred the ground was that theatre was done on, and that if it's ever, if it has been a theatre, and at that time we were in danger of losing our place to condos and the like in New York, he said it cannot be touched. That is sacred ground. It must remain a theatre. And it was the most beautiful piece, passionate piece that came, in seconds.
Sure.
Yeah.
It pours out of a man like that.
It does. It's
maybe one last question. Keep it simple. We were talking. I was saying to Charlotte, about Irish Rep. We're talking about the Irish Rep because it's we think of this as an opportunity also to recognize your theatre and the great work that your theatre has done.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there a production, or is there a moment in the history of your theatre that you hold close to heart?
I've become very fond of O'Neill.
Really?
Eugene O'Neill, and I've done a couple of them. I did the Hairy Ape and the Emperor Jones, and I think I'm particularly proud of the Emperor Jones because it had so much going against it, going into it. Right. The New York Times had said that no company could really possibly do that, ever again, and the only way it could be done was perhaps like by the Wooster Group, who takes it apart and puts it sometimes beyond recognition, So I actually love the play itself and think O'Neill is fantastic. So I was very proud to actually do the play exactly as O'Neill wrote it, I think, and I think he would have liked it. So that's my most proud moment, I think.